Hello, this is another episode of Rebuilding Careers. My name is Bonnie Pomish, and I am here today with the one and only Tanya Doby. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you and hear more about your story, Tanya. Tanya serves as the councilwoman in Los Alamitos, among many other things that we'll hear about. So, to get us started, Tanya, would you mind just sharing a bit about your background? Like, how did you grow up? Tell me a little bit about your life story, how it began.
Oh, began. All right, let's see. I am the oldest of five children. I come from a mixed background. My mother is a 5 foot blue-eyed brunette, and my father was about 5'10" and just as almost as black as this shirt. I grew up in all sides of Long Beach. I graduated high school, though, from Long Beach, Jordan, which was on the north side of Long Beach. And then I got my degree from Cal State Long Beach, Go Beach. And that's mostly, I grew up taking care of people. So I've always been deeply grounded in what I can do to help others. At first, it wasn't a choice, but then I began very early on to see the value and the importance of being of service to those that need it.
Wow, that's a humble way to say that you really put yourself maybe second and other people
Fifth.
first. Oh,
Yeah.
she's on the list, just
On
not
the
very
list.
high. Wow. Well, at a certain point, you entered the workforce.
Yeah.
So tell me, how did you earn your first paycheck? And I'd love to know what you learned from the experience too.
Okay, so my very first job, my mother was a dietetic supervisor at an assisted living facility, which shall remain nameless because I don't even know if they're still open. And I told my mother, like, Mom, like, get me the job. That's cool, but don't tell anybody who I am. Like, you don't have to tell them who I am. But my mother is the proudest woman. You
Oh,
meet her and she's, that's my daughter. That's my daughter. Those are my sons. That's my other daughter. These are all my kids. I'm their mom. Yes, these are all of mine. And within, I think she was quiet for maybe, I was a dishwasher. I was hired for the kitchen. So whatever you could do in the kitchen, I helped prep meals. I mostly washed dishes. I mopped floors. I did all those things because I was in high school.
uh-huh.
I think it was my junior year of high school. So that was my very first job. And my very first job, I quit and I timed it, and I regret nothing because what happened, they fired my mother after they found out that I was her child. So I planned it, and this will give you some insight into the type of child that I was. I waited until their busiest night when I knew that some of my coworkers had called off, and it was a payday. So I walked in and what was, nicely dressed for a child back then. I had on my nice button up shirt and, my nice jeans. And I took the bus all the way there, walked in, asked for my check, and I said, I quit effective immediately. Thank you. And I walked back.
And what did you learn from this experience?
Realistically, it was the importance of standing on what your values are.
Mm.
I could have easily stayed in my position because they did not have a problem with me. They had a problem with my mother. But then there's also loyalty, right? Like I would not have felt comfortable staying in that space knowing that the only reason they terminated my mother was because she had a mixed child. You can have whatever belief that you would like, but you're not allowed to impose those beliefs onto others. And I will never minimize myself or make
Mm.
myself smaller to fit in to spaces that I'm not necessarily welcomed in.
Oh, yeah. I'm so sorry that you experienced that kind of racism and bigotry and hatred. And the way that you handled it as a child is incredibly powerful to, at such a young age, to harness and use your power in a way that you made a bold statement. And it was not just to your employer, obviously, but to yourself about who am I? I am not a person who will stand for this. I will not be a part of standing idly by when this is happening. And I will stand up, not just for myself, but for whomever. Um, I'm thinking, about your mom, about who comes after you, but all the sort of ripple effects of that. So that's a big one. And I'm sorry that happened to you. But thank
It's
you for
fine.
sharing.
Adversity builds character.
Oh,
So there's nothing that I'll go through that I won't learn from. A favorite thing to say, and I say it all the time to my staff at the city, is I never lose. I win or I learn, but I never lose.
I love that. I have a yoga instructor that says fail, There's no such like fail. His definition of fail is first attempt in learning, right? That like you're not losing, you're just learning. And I love that too. I talk about that with my team as well. Like it's okay that we missed the mark. Just the more important, if we missed the mark, fine. But the most important part of that is what did we learn and how are we going to use it to get momentum on the next iteration of whatever it is.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, now, so you kind of started to fast forward into your work with the city. So share with me, how are you? I should kind of back this up that I have a belief that every single person has a unique way of contributing in the world, and that there's almost like a purpose that we fulfill by giving of ourselves those unique talents and skills in whatever way we do in community. So I'm really curious, what are your unique contributions and how are you making them in the world?
So first of all, everyone has something.
Yeah.
That they can uniquely contribute. That if people don't hear anything else that I say, if you don't understand anything else that I say, please understand that every single person has something that is unique to them that they can contribute no matter what space they enter. My unique contribution was in my city. Our largest neighborhood is called Apartment Row. I hate that name. It's still on my list of things to change, but it is the largest neighborhood in our entire city. And I was appointed to council in 2019. We all know what happened in 2019. The world shut down. COVID. But LA County decided to shut all of their parks. So Orange County and our city, they were like, okay, we'll just shut all of our parks. And I was like, well, tell me what you're going to do when you see me and my kids at the park. Because you're going to catch us at the park. Because I live in an apartment. I don't have a yard. And I have, at that time, my children were 10 and 7. And our neighborhood is chock full of children. They have not been outside. They have not been to school. They've been locked up. I was like, yeah, you can rope off the play equipment, but you got to let these babies outside. And what about the people that have pets? Where are they supposed to take them? And no one else had even considered that because either their children were grown or they had a yard. So what I endeavor to do in whatever room I find myself is being the voice of a different perspective.
Yeah.
Because it's not that someone doesn't want to hear what you're saying or that they're over talking you or that they can't understand. That's not their life. So that's not their first thought. Most people are open to information and that different perspective. Because when I said that, the rest of my colleagues were like, oh my God, we didn't even think about that. So of course, we left all of our parks open. They roped off the play equipment and they didn't open the bathrooms, but our grass areas were perfectly open and everyone very much appreciated it. So, and then I'm also a small business. So another thing that I'm always looking out for is the small businesses. Everybody knows that they really make up our economy. It's not the big businesses, it's the small ones. So we had a lot of businesses that were shutting down again during the pandemic. And I was always looking for ways like, how do we support our small businesses? Because I'm one. Now, I cannot benefit from a decision that I can make. So I just went out to find funding. And I saw that LA County had a bunch of funding through this organization. So I told my city manager, go find the money for us. And then he did. And he was able to bring back, it was a couple $100,000 for our businesses to apply for these different, and they didn't have to pay him back, these grants. And so that's what I always try to bring to any table that I'm either invited to sit at or I just believe I should be.
Yes. I love that you're also leaning into this concept that not only do you have a different experience and perspective to share, but that you can empathize and think about what is my fellow human experiencing and advocate on behalf of that experience, that perspective. So thank you. And thanks for being that voice. I think it's not always easy to, I don't really like the saying, but, put ourselves in someone else's shoes, like to walk a day in someone else's shoes. I don't believe that you ever can, but I think it's really wise that you are opening the eyes and, just the purview of what how we're making decisions and who it's impacting, how, and had you thought about?
Yeah.
Keep up the good work.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, it sounds to me like there's probably, you said something to the effect of, that adversity builds your character. And so that leads me to believe that there's probably been more than one instance that you've overcome a barrier in your life. And I I admire so much Working Wardrobes clients. We have about 5,000 people. Last year, actually 5,500 people that we reached in 1 year. And no two of those people are the same. Mm-hmm. No two of those people have the same, background experiences, nor do they have the same barriers that they're overcoming on their employment journeys. And what I think it is it's a vulnerable place. It's a sacred, space to go into with someone who is seeking help. And it is quite the privilege to be with them in that space and holding that space together. Mm-hmm. We're not trying to take the drivers, we're not trying to take the steering wheel. We are passengers. We call our team career navigators. They're helping navigate a career, helping guide, but the person that we are helping is fully in control and driving. Mm-hmm. And where they're driving is over lots of different obstacles and barriers between them and gainful employment. Sometimes that can be really basic needs. It can be, I need help with food and shelter and, just a steady place to take care of my kids. It can be, I have this large gap in my employment history and I don't know how to share and articulate the skills, the lessons I learned during that gap in employment history, but it's valuable and it has a place in the work that you're looking to hire for, et cetera. So will you share with us your experience, your personal experience overcoming maybe more than one barrier, maybe one barrier on your employment journey?
Absolutely. I do want to touch on the employment gap. I'm an HR consultant peripherally. Every now and again, I'm not taking clients. But one thing that I tell people when they're filling out a resume is everything is important. Unless you just sat at home and you did nothing. You literally did nothing. You just sat at home and you did nothing. That is considered quality volunteer experience. I've talked to lots of mothers that transition from being at home with their children to then going out into the workforce. And it's like, okay, well, tell me how you had to manage your time. Tell me how you had to organize those schedules. Tell me how you had to manage the budget for the home. All of that is viable and all of that can be worded in such a way that people can see the value and the merit in it. So it's really how you look at yourself. And that leads me into probably my biggest barrier is how people think I should see myself as a Black woman. I don't see myself the way that people think I should see myself as a Black woman, because those are two things I didn't have any control over and I can't change them. Nope. That's just the way I was born. So, I mean, this is me. And any room that I find myself in, I have as much right to be in that room as anybody else that's in there. And I talk to myself that way. It's not, well, how did you just wake up like that? No, these are conversations that I have with myself when I come against, like when I was running in 2020, I was running against an incumbent who is a fixture in the Los Al community. And he was known for something that he had said years ago, and people wanted to label him racist. And I'm like, I don't know him to be a racist. He's never said anything to me, but that was the lens that they kept trying to pit us against each other. Like, oh, Black woman against white man. And this is just going to be the narrative. Absolutely not. No, it's not, because I don't deserve this seat because I'm a Black woman. I deserve this seat because what I bring to the table. I have input and I have a perspective that nobody else is going to be able to give you. And they're not going to have the same passion. They're not going to have the same articulation. And ultimately, they're not going to have the same reach that I do. And that's the best gift that most anybody has. You have to sit with yourself and figure out, what am I really good at? What am I passionate about? What can I do without thinking? And it brings joy to me, because that's typically a starting point to see where should you go. And it's not always the easy, oh, I'll go do retail, oh, I'll go do fast food, oh, I'll go and do, customer service. That might be your calling, because you can reach people anywhere that you are. But don't minimize what you have to offer because somebody else didn't tell you what it was. Because if you don't see you, here's the secret, you ready? People only see you the way you see yourself. Ooh. No one is going to give you more credit than you give yourself. So there are some people, if they're not secure in who they are, if they haven't found out what their wheelhouse is, they are intimidated by me. That ain't got nothing to do with me, because I'm not intimidating. If someone is intimidated, that is a personal call and issue that they have to reflect themselves out of. But I know exactly who I am and I know what I have to offer, but I've sat with myself and I've checked in with myself and I've done the work on myself. Like, okay, Tanya, what are you passionate about? What do you care about? What are you good at? What do you have to offer? And then I will boldly go and walk in those things and walk those things out in whatever room I end up in. I never saw myself as an elected official. I never saw myself as a council member. 5 years ago, I couldn't tell you who was on our council. I couldn't tell you who the governor was. Child, they send me the packets. I'm reading through it like everybody else. But now, because I realized, I have a gift for some of these things, and I followed that passion. So to sum that up, the adversity building character, the letting what other people think about you influence you. You can't do that because some people will never see your potential because it will affect their outcome because they haven't really figured out who they are. You cannot allow someone else's lack of information on themselves impact the way that you see yourself. Nobody can speak more highly of me than me. Nobody can tell me, oh, Tanya, you should do. I'll take that under advisement, but I know where my strengths are. I know what I'm very good at. And bring the adversity on. I'm okay because it does build character. You either learn from it or you don't. I say I never lose. I don't lose. I never have. I win or I learn. And it's in that learning that you just get up and you try it again. Maybe you tweak something. Maybe you need a different audience for whatever it is that you're trying to do. But that's in you. You have to figure that out because the biggest cheerleader that you'll ever have, and my mama's a huge cheerleader for me. You hear me? But I'm still a bigger advocate for myself than she could ever be.
Oh, that's amazing to me. And this is something I'm taking very much to heart what you're saying, and sincerely, because my self-talk is not that confident. I know myself. And I think I'm always getting to know myself because sometimes I surprise myself with, oh, I didn't know I was going to be good at that. Okay. That's exciting. But there's a lot of wisdom in what you just shared. And I'm going to continue processing this, and I'm going to probably ask you later for the Tanya Doby tips for self-talk. But it sounds like you've really made a habit of those check-ins and that just that self-awareness. But also, what I'm really hearing you say is, I choose what voice I listen to, and the voice that I make sure is loudest is mine. That's very discerning and truly a accumulation, I think, of probably life's experiences and who you're continuing to become. If you had to rebuild your career, I mean, just like snap your fingers, all of a sudden everything you're doing is gone. How would you even go about rebuilding your career? What would you do?
I call that a pivot, and I've had to do it. I am an apparel and accessories, like promotional merchandising person. That's what I do for money because politics does not pay. And when the pandemic hit, most of my customers were schools. Schools closed. So I had to sit down and all right, we need to pivot. What are we going to do? Now, I'm a praying woman. So that's what I went. I was like, I need to go in my closet and we're going to figure this thing out. And I prepared myself. I did not see the answer right then. You cannot be afraid because the answer doesn't immediately reveal itself. But I believed that it was going to ultimately work out for me. And I couldn't entertain any doubt with that. So what ended up happening is I began to position myself and prepare myself for what could come next. So I tightened up my website. I, reached out to some of the clients that I knew would still be active, even if they weren't schools, like some of the sports leagues and whatever, they were still kind of, so I worked on the things that were within my control, so that when the things that were outside of my control finally manifested for me, I was ready to go. And that's what ended up happening. I had a customer randomly reach out to me. And they were like, can you do pins? And the other secret is I'll never say no. If someone asks, can you do this? Yes, I can do anything. I can do anything. Now, you ask me, have I? That's different. But if someone asks me, can I? Absolutely. Can you do this? Yes, I can. I didn't even know what the pin was called. I know what it is now. They're enamel pins. But we were calling them Disney pins. I had no idea what they were talking about. But that's the secret. I positioned myself and I got ready. So because life cycles.
Yeah.
Right. So what you're doing today, you might not be doing 5 years from
Right.
now, because you'll elevate or you'll pivot.
Yeah.
And it's just not being afraid of the pivot.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you work on the parts that are within your control so that when the parts that pop up that are not, you're ready to jump on whatever the opportunity was.
Right.
Now, if I'd have sat there and been like, oh my God, I'm going to be broke, I'm going to be poor, I can't feed my kids, and just sulked in that, then I would not have been ready when that customer hit me up asking me for something that I,
Yeah.
but because I was actively engaged and I was ready, I knew they were coming. I just
Mm-hmm.
didn't know when.
Or how. And it sounds like your openness is what really carries you through this openness, but also circling back your confidence. I know I am capable. I don't know how, but I'll figure it out, or I'll get an expert or a person that will help me figure it out. But yes, the answer is yes. So let's take that question a little bit. And is there advice that you would share with a Working Wardrobes client about rebuilding their career? And if so, what would it be?
So careers, right? You look at what have you been doing and why did you stop? Because I think it's reframing. It's how you frame a situation. Like, oh my God, I was with this company for 15 years and then they let me go. Okay. Did you like what you were doing? Were there facets of it that you like? Because I said I do HR consulting. I don't do benefits because I don't want to.
Yeah.
And I don't do anti-harassment training because I call people baby. I'm not the right one to do that. So the facets of HR that I like, that I'm good at, that I'm natural with, those are the only parts that I offer. And I made that executive decision. And now people pay me to do it.
Yeah.
So you can just figure out, okay, what, instead of panic, like you can't panic. You just gotta just take a couple ticks and, all right, I had that job. What did I like about it? What would I have changed? And then sometimes it's, take that leap and work for yourself. I think a lot of people they don't even consider, I could be doing what I'm doing for someone else. I could do that for myself. And I could make even more money because I set my price point and I don't have to share my profits.
Right.
So it's really, that's what I would say is think about before you jump into another one. Like, just don't panic. Give yourself a second and think about, what do I want to do? Like, what is going to bring some joy where you're not? I had one job in college. I literally would cry. I'm not a crier. I would cry on my drive in because it was horrible. The traffic, the manager that I had, some of the work environment was a little toxic. And I was just like, oh my God. So I was laid off from that job trying to plan a wedding. So the timing was a little intense. Oof. But I sat with that and I was like, all right, because I'm what? I don't know, 20, 21 years old, because I got married at 23. So I was about 21 or 22. So I sat with it like, all right, man, what do you want to do? And do you want to go back into a full-time job? Or why don't you go back and get your degree? Like, go focus on school. So it's just giving yourself the opportunity to really figure out, what do you want to do? Give yourself license and permission to figure out, what do you really want to do before you spiral and find yourself in another position that you might not want to be in.
Well, and that's probably like it's I don't know, I'm going to say automatic pilot, but it can be easy to just go back to what you're used to instead of really exploring what's possible. That's great advice. There's a bit of a theme emerging here, which is like really, I think it's a Shakespearean quote, right? Like um, this above all, to thine own self be true. Right? Like to know yourself and to be true to yourself and to honor these pieces of yourself that are speaking to you. Your tears were speaking to you, telling you you were about to do something that you don't want to do. Oh, wow. That's okay. So I'm going to flip the script one more time. And, just the other day, I had an amazing experience. Pastor Steve Kim was facilitating an activity at Mayor Mesqua's prayer breakfast for the city of Santa Ana. Okay. And there were hearts on the table and like a piece of paper heart. And everyone was asked to, in 3 words, or around 3 words, share advice with your 16, 17, 18-year-old self. So the 3 words that I wrote on my heart were, you are enough. I would love to hear, maybe in more than 3 words or 3 words, what your advice to your younger self would be.
What immediately comes to mind is just keep swimming. Just keep
Yeah.
swimming. That's what my dad passed like 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a tumultuous relationship. It was more, I mourned the opportunity that were
Potential.
lost, not necessarily the actual relationship that we had. And that was something that I would just keep swimming.
Yeah.
Just keep like Finding Nemo.
Yeah, that's
Just
it.
keep swimming. So that's just keep swimming. It works itself out. The only time you get stuck is if you become too fixated, and most of the things you cannot control anyway.
Yeah.
Like I think that's the parcels that we belabor is things that they're not even in your control anyway. So go focus on the things that just keep swimming.
Yeah.
Just go focus on the things that are in your control and leave everything else because it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen. Life is just gonna keep moving.
Right.
Whether you want it to, whether you engage with it, whether you think you're giving it permission, it doesn't matter. So just keep swimming.
I don't know about you, but I feel so nourished by this conversation and this real, I accept your invitation to really know myself and to our listeners to take the time, and of course myself too, not excluding myself, but to take the time to have those internal dialogues, to take pause, but to keep going and to have this deep-rooted faith that it will be the opportunity will come for me to give my talents, my gifts, my strengths to the world and to just keep at it. Tanya Doby, you are an amazing force. I am so grateful that you are in service to the public in many roles, and I am delighted to have had you on the podcast today. This has been another episode of Rebuilding Careers. My name is Bonnie Pomish, and it was a delight having you here with me today, Tanya. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.